Welcome to Module 2, Discover Customer Needs as a Solution Architect for Dynamics 365 and Microsoft Power Platform. This module is part of the Architect Solutions for Dynamics 365 and Microsoft Power Platform learning path. Let's get started. Discover customer needs as a solution architect for Dynamics 365 and Microsoft Power Platform. Customer discovery is an ongoing process. Discovery is performed at the pre-sales stage during project kickoff and is continued through the iterations of your solution building. Knowing your customer, how they think, and what they need are vital ingredients to the success of a project. The most important question that you can ask during the discovery phase is why. Occasionally, however, that question must be asked in different ways. For example, when a customer says, "We need a button on this screen to do this thing," your why question might sound more like, "What do users need to have happen after completing their tasks on this screen?"
Welcome to our module on discovering customer needs for the Business Application Solution Architect. When we say customer, we mean current or future customer. Maybe you're in discovery process for a pre-sales presentation. You could be reading an RFP, a request for proposal, to apply for a potential new project, or maybe you've been awarded the project and it's time to be serious about defining the requirements into something actionable. Listen to the customer, how they explain what they have and what they need, repeat it back to them, ensure mutual understanding. All of these are helpful hints that we can use to better serve our customers as an architect. In this module, we'll dive into suggestions and strategy for getting to know your customer, getting to understand how we can offer them a solution that not only addresses their requirements, but makes their users happy. We will discuss concepts such as, how do you get to be viewed as the trusted advisor for the customer? How do you build that trust? How do you connect at multiple levels within an organization, and why is this important? What do you do when different customer experts give you conflicting information or requirements? All of these contribute to a customer's confidence in you and your ability to deliver what they need. In reality, the discovery process never ends. As your relationship with a customer evolves, you are continually learning more about each other. Your initial discovery could happen before you've even met the customer. How do you learn about them? Depending on the circumstances, you might spend a quick 30 minutes looking at their online footprint, or you may spend much more significant time learning as much as you can about your customer to better address their needs. Having discovery meetings for fact-finding is a vital part of a project. Things may not always be as they first appear. How can you ask the right questions to get actionable requirements? And evaluating those needs, once you've been given the requirements, it's time to evaluate and begin to define the path you should take for a successful implementation. Join us in this module as we cover this and more.
This module covers the following topics, starting with initial customer discovery, a process that often happens before they are actually your customers. Managing customer discovery meetings by preparing in advance and having a plan for what happens next. Listening to an interview between two solution architects on how they communicate with customers. Evaluate customer needs and how that process is more than simply marking items on a checklist as complete. Additionally, this topic examines how you can add value and meet customer requirements. Introducing your customer. This module refers to the customer Woodgrove Bank, and the exercises and discussions throughout the lesson relate to this customer and how you can help them. Woodgrove Bank is a leading global financial services provider with an emphasis on commercial lending and investments. Administrative users work in the office and are never mobile. However, all middle-level managers need to be able to work from their home offices or while on site with a client. The team at Woodgrove feels overwhelmed with their disparate systems. Therefore, they are looking for a solution that connects their data in a way that boosts financial success and customer satisfaction. With an internal-facing only deployment, Woodgrove Bank would have fewer regulatory concerns. However, each team within the bank would have their own responsibilities. The following table describes Woodgrove Bank's customer-facing teams. Business growth and asset management. Commercial accounts with less than $1 billion in annual transactions. Growth in this sense refers to the loans used to reinvest in the corporation. These customers share a group of account managers. They are not specifically assigned to an individual. Fortune 500. Each customer in this division is assigned a senior account manager as their primary contact for all banking matters. Once a company is managed in this division, they remain here, even if they roll off the Fortune 500. Group Portfolio Management. This team manages the parent-child accounts for firms with multiple organizations under a common umbrella. New Business Development. This division is primarily marketing for new business. Once an account is qualified and active, it moves on to the appropriate management team. Public Sector, Government, Higher Education. Woodgrove is a preferred lender to many sovereign governments around the globe, as well as private universities. This team also tends to the handful of high-volume non-profits serviced by the bank. Consumer Lending. This team is the smallest as Woodgrove focuses on commercial products. However, high-volume consumer lending is available on a case-by-case basis. This team is not advertised to external prospects, but mostly utilised by the executives of corporate clients. Relationship Managers. This team consists of members of each of the other teams. This ensures a consistent experience as accounts may move between teams and interact in other ways. This team also establishes best practices for users. Escalation Call Center. The bank runs a 24/7 365 call center. They have a 5-person team, 1 manager and 4 CSRs in each of the Chicago, Frankfurt and 2 teams in an outsourced center in Manila, the Philippines, doing an early and late shift to cover the APAC region. In addition to these teams, Woodgrove Bank has the standard set of C-suite executives who are involved with overall bank operations and supporting the teams as needed. Woodgrove Bank is hoping to have a new system in pilot phase so the CEO can present initial results to the annual general meeting, AGM, in 4 months' time. Initial customer discovery. Learning about your customer is an ongoing process. It starts at the beginning of an engagement and continues throughout. You can learn about customers from the customers themselves. However, you can also learn about your customers from outside sources, information that can prove helpful. If a company is featured in the headlines, it affects their business. If the headline is positive, record earnings, or negative, scandal, it affects the culture and the people and in turn the business. Initial discovery. When you first learn of a potential customer, many public sources are available for you to access to learn about the customer and perhaps gain insight into their motivation for seeking a software solution. As you learn about the customer, start keeping track of stakeholders. A stakeholder might be directly named, such as an executive sponsor, or it could be an informal influencer, the tenured frontline employee that everyone admires. These idiosyncrasies can make or break a project. A keen awareness will set you up for success. Company public website. While it might seem obvious, you can learn a lot from a company's website. From a website, you can learn about a company's past and their vision for the future. Additionally, you can learn about a company's view of what they have to offer. A bank might mention how safe your money is in their hands, or a university might showcase student happiness and alumni success. These details should help guide you when determining how best to serve the needs of your customer. The larger the company, the bigger the chances are that they had several lines of business. You might only be involved with a subset of a customer's larger organization. It is important to understand the needs of those with which you are directly engaged and the needs of the larger organization. Furthermore, you should determine how the department that you work with fits into the big picture, and whether you can streamline more than one department or line of business. Publicly traded companies will also have posted earnings reports, and the news outlets will have predictions and responses to these reports. These companies will also have named executives and board directors. Review these resources, look for patterns, and examine other key details to help build your knowledge of the organization. Information that you see on websites can offer fast-track help, such as photos on an About page, which can help you quickly recognize faces at your first meeting with the customer. At a minimum, you should know the names and key details of the decision makers whom you are dealing with, as well as key C-level executives. Also, on the About page, you could learn that you have a common background with a key stakeholder, such as having attended the same university. Commonalities help create familiarity. Social media sites. Many organizations have social media presence. Organizations share their own messaging and publicly respond to others through social media. You can review and identify pain points and successes with these interactions. You can also find their fans and casual associates. In addition to company-level social media, key players of the organization will also have online details that you can glean and learn from. Some online details can help you discover the CEO's background or whether a company merger recently occurred. Sites such as LinkedIn are great resources for professional details. News outlets. An outsider's perspective offers different insight. An analyst's view might show comparisons to competitors, offer speculation on market motivation, suggest future movements, and more. Additionally, when an organization is in the news, it should influence how you interact with them. For example, news stories that occur on the day of your pre-sales demo might change your narrative so that you either address or avoid a particular topic. This insight offers you a head start on the conversation and shows that you are interested in the world's view of the customer. Learn from a request for proposal. A request for proposal, or RFP, is often a fairly formal request to meet the defined solution. It can be written by the business or by IT. Ideally, both business and IT have a hand in developing the RFP, with influence from whomever is paying for the solution. You might see RFPs that focus on cost savings and some that focus on rich feature sets. Identifying and learning from these approaches is valuable in getting to know your potential customer. Develop customer questions. From the insight that you've learned in this lesson, you can develop probing questions to help you meet the requirements and offer added business value beyond what is stated in an RFP document. For example, after learning of a company's mission statement, you might ask the following questions. This requirement says that you need a response time of 24 hours on support requests. If we could use AI and automate and decrease response times to better meet your mission statement's stated customer focus, would that be helpful? Upon seeing that 60% of the requirements in the RFP reference secure access, avoiding data breaches and legal requirements of fiduciary responsibility, you might ask the following question. I've noticed how important data security and access is to your organization. Microsoft is committed to helping provide a secure cloud. Are you familiar with the Microsoft Trust Center? Reading more into the represented information when you're offering a solution to a customer will help make requirements gathering smoother and more valuable for you. Exercise. Review the information about Woodgrove Bank and then determine if certain details are missing that might be helpful in completing your task. Draft at least 5 questions that you would ask the customer. Don't forget to ask why. Consider asking yourself the following questions during your customer research. What is the public's perception of Woodgrove Bank? What is the background of the project owners, stakeholders, and decision makers? Does the bank have legacy data that you need to be concerned with, and how much? What are the concerns about the location of data?
Welcome to our talk for the Business Application Solution Architect, where we'll discuss the intangibles of customer discovery. So as a solution architect, your role in the discovery process will greatly vary depending upon your team, depending upon the specific customer and their needs. Some things that you might be taking into consideration is acknowledging the unique stakeholder perspective. And by this, I mean realizing that perhaps each group of stakeholders have a slightly different perspective. You may have someone who's most interested in user adoption and somebody else who's most interested in the specific return on investment for whatever it costs to create the system. You'll always want to make sure that you're getting a demo of their current solutions. Understanding their current state and how you can make that better is a very important component here of how we can build a long-lasting solution. And this goes right into understanding their business. So their business and their lines of business will greatly influence how you can offer the solutions. Perhaps they have a certain company culture that will lend itself to offering solutions of a different variety. Those are all things that are important to be aware of. As you go through discovery, it's important for you to be able to show that you understand what the customer is going through, not just to understand it, but to demonstrate to them. Perhaps have more conversations maybe go through some of their processes that they have now to discover some of the unknown things, the items that should be requirements but have not yet been tracked as a requirement. And then getting to know the real need, not always just how we've done it before. Oftentimes we get stuck in the mindset of, well, this has worked before, so we'll do it again. But in this scenario, when we're building out new solutions, it's important for us as architects to be aware of that and how we can best solve the problem now, not just how we have solved the problem in the past.
Customer discovery meetings. Now that you've had the chance to schedule direct time with your customer, it's time to determine how you can make the best use of your time and of the customer's time. A bit of preliminary work will be beneficial in this regard. Most customer discovery meetings have many commonalities which are discussed in this lesson. Types of discovery meetings. Different types of communication can occur throughout the life of a project. During the discovery process, you need to be able to gather actionable requirements and intangible needs. Often, even after you have met all of the stated requirements, the intangible success that you have will ensure long-term satisfaction with the presented solutions. While you might be given a well-documented set of requirements, making them actionable will require a bit more work. Workshops can be a way to present a lot of information in a short period of time. You can hold workshops for targeted groups of stakeholders. Publish an advanced agenda and try to stay on topic. Realize that every attendee and every workshop are different. While some groups are comfortable scribbling wireframes on a whiteboard, others might prefer to write requirements on sticky notes for later prioritization. Make sure that you adapt to the different learning styles and schedule follow-up communication to clarify any topics as needed. Surveys with questions that are targeted to specific roles can yield requirements and offer insight into the importance of certain features or for solving specific problems. Surveys also offer the chance to receive anonymous feedback, which could be helpful in gaining insight into the needs that a quiet user base might have. Job shadowing works well when you're trying to gather more detailed information. While job shadowing, you can follow the daily activities of a user whom you are hoping to help with the solution. Take notes, ask questions, be engaged. Learn the pain points and learn what goes well and what doesn't. Many industries have their own vocabulary. It can be helpful to keep track of the industry vocabulary and to note any customer-specific terms. Keep track of your customers' data definitions can also prove helpful as the project progresses. Fill in the gaps of your pre-discovery. This lesson has discussed ways of getting to your customer prior to starting a project. After you've learned high-level details about your customer and their business, you need to take further steps that will lead you down the right path of a solution. These steps include evaluating the customer data architecture, examining the customer's line of business, determining the impacts that apps have on customer solutions, discovering the customer's pain points. Each task is imperative for a successful solution. The amount of time that you spend on these tasks varies from project to project. Data is always a concern. While people typically spend a lot of time on data architecture, they don't consider the influences such as data location, history, and quality. These influences should be considered every step of the way in project development. Ask your customer the following questions to determine how these influences affect the data architecture. Where does the data reside now? Where should it reside? Do you have integrity concerns? Do you have duplicates or other data quality issues? Are you keeping historical data and how much? What type of access will users need to historical data? Few companies have a single line of business. Because your customer likely has multiple lines of business, ask them the following questions to determine how these lines of business and their needs affect the solutions that you are offering and implementing. What overlaps in process between lines of business? What overlaps in data between lines of business? What new lines of business are in the near-term plans? Do other business units use similar Microsoft technologies? You cannot assume that your solution will live in isolation with no other apps or systems in place. To determine how those other apps might impact your work on the solution, ask your customer the following questions. What apps or systems are you replacing? What apps or systems must you keep? Is a connector or API available? Define success criteria. Throughout the discovery process, as you learn more about the customer, you will learn about their pain points. Typically, pain points involve customer response time, consistent processes, and data integrity. After you have established the customer's specific pain points, you can then determine the problems that they need to resolve. Taking this initiative will allow you to help your customer define their desired results, which in turn helps you focus on the specifics of their solution. Knowing more about your customer's needs can help you establish a comprehensive outcome, such as expecting that the solution will decrease customer wait times by 18%, which translates to your customer saving money over time. Identifying pain points improves user adoption. However, establishing clearly defined objectives helps the customers resolve their issues. You will find that some business objectives will likely present themselves during the discovery process, while others will be directly defined by the customer. Regardless, when these objectives are established, you and your customer will be able to move forward with the solution and realize success. Additional components to success. In addition to defining requirements and goals, other interactions that can help you get a project off to a good start include learning business processes and considering the request for proposal. Learn business processes. When implementing the new solution, you will add process automation. However, before adding automation, you need to define processes for your customer. Because your customer will likely have processes that are already in place, you will need to extract them and determine how the proposed solutions can streamline these business processes. You can extract the existing processes by performing any or all of the following tasks: job shadowing different users or departments, reviewing automation that is already in place, looking for pain points as processes run their course, asking the customer directly about their process. Connect with all levels of the organization. Every department and every level within a department is likely to have slightly different and specific objectives, even if the larger objectives are the same. Connecting with each of these groups immediately in a project will offer a better path to success. Recognizing potential for conflicting needs and offering solutions in advance of actual conflict can help gain buy-in from more stakeholders. As an outsider looking in, you should be able to recognize some of these areas of resolution before internal-facing resources would. RFP considerations. A request for proposal, or RFP, can be extremely detailed or incredibly thin. The details could have been written by the business or by IT. You could be replacing, supplementing, or integrating with an existing system. All of these factors influence what we see in an RFP and influence our approach to finding a solution. Exercise. Draft a project plan summary. You've had your first informal meeting with the customer and have learned the following information from your 2-hour conversation with the CIO. Each bank is required to keep copies of important signed documents for 7 years. The CEO plays golf with a senior executive from Awesome Computers, a competitor. They also attended university together. Specific single transactions require government notification, corporate deposits over USD 1 million and consumer deposits over USD 50,000. Currently, the system contains a lot of bad data and several duplicates, so the new system needs to resolve that issue and prevent it from happening again. The bank's vice president has seen many impressive marketing campaigns from the pre-sales team and wants to implement a complete, branded, multi-channel marketing solution. The bank has recently hired a new COO, who is rapidly gaining a reputation as an IT aficionado with a particular enjoyment of segmenting and viewing data in Microsoft Excel. Next month, the entire Tier 1 and Tier 2 management team at the bank are receiving tablet PCs. Recent turmoil in Europe has led to banks receiving calls from panicked mid-sized commercial customers that the bank had mistakenly forgotten about. Several of the relationship managers are new hires from Contoso Financial Services, a competing firm who changed their CRM from Microsoft about 9 months ago. Several affiliates of Woodgrove Bank have expressed interest in having a new system as well. Draft a project plan summary where you begin to define some of the following parameters: problem statement, business objectives, project objectives. Scope. What's in scope and what's out of scope. Governance plans. Timelines. Deliverables. Topics to consider for this exercise. Whether you can begin to define success criteria and what might prevent you from doing so. Who the identified stakeholders are. Personas or organizations that you might be missing. Risks that you can identify. Customer communication strategy. Now that you have ideas on how to communicate with and learn about your customer, watch the following video and listen to experts discuss real-world scenarios.
So this is Julie, and I'm here with Nick, and he is a solution architect with loads of experience, and I thought it would be great to chat with him about some of the details about communication and getting to know your customers. How you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing awesome, Julie. Thanks. How are you?
I am well, thank you. So let's just jump right in.
Sure.
So we all know that communication is key to getting requirements right. What types of communications do you prefer when you're launching a project?
Well, definitely, email communication is good in that because that could have a lot of detail in it. But if I'm launching a project, I definitely want to get in face-to-face with the customer if that's at all possible and try to get the key stakeholders in the room. And then that way you can kind of learn by talking to people what their facial expressions are, how they're reacting to things you're saying. And then that could begin to drive some other further communications, not just with the individuals, but with the organization as a whole. Is there key people that are leading this? Is it a situation where there's a committee involved and we have to, make sure all the stakeholders are heard correctly? Or is it, kind of directed by a person that's sort of leading the charge? So I like the face-to-face definitely as at the starting point, just to sort of set the tone right for a particular project.
That makes total sense, Nick, and I completely agree with you. And as much as we all prefer to talk about success, sometimes we do learn more from our mistakes. Can you recall a time when maybe communication just wasn't working well, and how did you move past it?
I was thinking about that, and there's a particular project that comes in mind, and I think we did a really good job on the project itself, but there was key stakeholders that were using the system, and they actually preferred the old system. And even though they might not have ranked very high within the organization, they did hold a lot of power in terms of the systems being used because they were the ones using it. And they pretty much, a little bit of an older generation refused to use the system, and they ended up going back to their old system because this particular person kind of refused to use the new one. I think what I reflected on that one was this is a case of I should have had a better picture of the corporate environment I was working in and tried to remove some of the objections that maybe these users had and tried at a much earlier stage to win them over. And that would have made the project, like I said, I think overall technically the project was a success, but the user adoption was the downfall on this. And that's something I think a solution architect needs to keep their eyes open for, is not just the technical wins, but also the human resource wins as well.
Yeah, because without those happy users, we don't have jobs, right?
Correct.
When we're looking at projects or pending projects and we've got that RFP in our hands and we're reviewing a published RFP, what are key items that you look for in that RFP? What things can we learn from that?
That's a really interesting question. I'm not, to be quite honest, as a solution architect, I'm not a big fan of RFPs, and I don't know many solution architects that are. However, it is part of the system, and we have to deal with it. One of the key things that I look for was the RFP written by potentially a consulting company or a party that's also has a vested interest in potentially delivering that solution? And it's a fair question. You can ask the question. Most RFPs, they have a question period, or you can submit written questions. And that's a question I don't think we should be shy to ask. Is the question would be, is the folks that have written the RFP, are they also potentially bidding on this project? Because if they are, you're at a slight disadvantage already. The RFP's been, I would say, pre-wired to that particular consulting company. So that's one key thing that I kind of keep an eye out for. And that in turn kind of determines my investment in responding to that. And then there's been situations where, we definitely, as in organizations I've worked with have won over clients, even though the, other people were helping prepare that RFP. Another exercise that I've done recently was I was on the opposite side where I had to create an RFP and submit that out. I was working for an organization. It was not a Dynamics 365 project. It was an IT project. But because of my experience and the time I had, I said, yeah, I can run with this. it was a huge eye opener in terms of being on the other side of the fence, seeing the responses, the questions, and the companies that did respond, and also the ones that didn't respond as well, and the reasons they gave why they were not going to respond. So I think to be a good solution architect, you might want to put the shoe on the other foot. And if you're reading an RFP, sort of if you were involved in preparing one, I think you have a unique perspective, which should really help you respond to other RFPs.
Well, I've definitely noticed the difference in RFPs that have been created by the business versus RFPs that have been created by IT.
Yeah.
So when we're actively gathering requirements, let's assume that we've been awarded the project, we're actively gathering those requirements. What stakeholders do you think we might miss? How can we get them involved in the conversations early enough to make an impact?
Yeah, that's another great question. I think, every organization sort of has their own methodology in terms of gathering requirements. And a lot of them involve workshops where you're sitting in a meeting room and you have the sticky notes and the big whiteboards and the paper, and you're trying to list out the requirements, or some of these might already be documented. And I think that's definitely important. But what I also think is a key activity that I try to do is do a little bit of job shadowing. And when you actually ask to shadow someone's process, it's one thing to sit in a meeting room where they say, well, here's our process. We start here, we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this, is actually to watch it in action. And then that's where you begin to see where, oh, I need to talk to, Sally down at the warehouse. And you realize, well, how come we didn't talk to Sally before? And then you can actually begin to engage in some of those conversations when you're doing the job shadowing and doing doing some of that requirements gathering. So it's, definitely documenting all that, but also, watching what people do. And a lot of times you'll discover that there's a lot of unconscious processes or other people are involved, and maybe the organization itself doesn't realize, hey, that these people are involved, or this is the process. This might be the process on paper, but there's actually the real world process that gets followed. And just walking around and meeting people and just seeing what they're doing in their job and what systems they use can actually give you a huge eye opener. And if you do that early in the project, it's, as you design out the solution, you can begin to adapt and address these particular needs that people might have.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. I really do appreciate your time today. And I appreciate your insight that you've given us here for our solution architects.
Well, thank you, Julie. Hope you have a great day.
Let's check your knowledge. Answer the following questions to see what you've learned. What is the most important question that you can ask a customer during the discovery process? What's the budget? When? How? Why? I'll go with why. At what stage of a project do you learn about your customer? Analysis, design, implementation, pre-sales, or every stage? I'll say every stage. What is the difference between an objective and a pain point? They are interchangeable. Pain points define desired results, objectives identify problems, or objectives define desired results, pain points identify problems. I'll go with that one. Summary. As you discover details about your customer, you should begin to plan a solution to their requirements. Early in the process, when issues aren't actionable yet, it's your time to listen and learn. This module discussed the following objectives in discovering your customer's needs. Learning about your customer from public sources, managing your discovery meetings, communication styles and strategy. That's the end of this module. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful for your learning path. Continue with the playlist shown above to continue learning for this learning path. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.